all corporations have social and environmental impacts. And you can't really operate as a corporation without having an environmental impact and a social impact. You know, every corporation produces carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. Every corporation produces waste. Every corporation employs people. It may pay them decent wages, or it may pay them bad wages. It may employ them under good conditions or bad conditions. It may employ child labor. It may not employ child labor. But there is a range of parameters, possibilities here, but all corporations have impacts both in the social and the environmental field. And that's obviously always been the case since corporations began. However, within, I guess, the last, I don't know, roughly 10, 15, maybe 20 years, probably 15 years, these environmental and social impacts have become much more a matter of concern than they used to be historically. And in particular, much more a matter of concern within the corporations. It's probably fair to say that if you look at the Fortune 500 companies at this point, the vast majority of them have people who are responsible for monitoring and managing these social and environmental impacts, and who report either directly to the CEO or to someone who reports themselves directly to the CEO. So in other words, the corporate social and environmental impacts have become the stuff of corporate executive decision-making and of corporate policy in a way that they weren't, even relatively recently, as little as, say, 20 years ago. So the first thing I want to try to understand is why this has happened. Why are corporations today concerned about social and environmental impacts when 20, 30 years ago they were most certainly not? And I'm going to argue that there are 4 factors that have contributed to this, and try to understand what the implications of these factors are. One is, goes back to the Reagan-Thatcher era and the rhetoric of rolling back the frontiers of the state, which I'm sure many of you remember, positively or negatively. During that era, a lot of industries a lot of state-managed sectors were privatized. There was an awful lot of deregulation. And one of the consequences of that was that if you transfer things from the state to the private sector, or you deregulate the private sector, one of the consequences of that is that standards and decisions which used to be made by the state now come to be made by the corporation. So you're pitching into the corporate in the area of corporate decision-making issues which were previously covered by state enterprises or by state regulatory bodies. You can see that actually even in during the last 7 years of the current Bush administration. Although the Bush administration has not technically deregulated on environmental issues, it has effectively neglected the implementation of a lot of environmental laws. And as a result of that, corporations have choices which they didn't used to have. I mean, they can decide whether to take advantage of the lapses in the administration of a number of the US's principal environmental laws or not. So corporations have more choice about setting their own standards on social and environmental matters in a world where, quote, the frontiers of the state have been rolled backwards, deliberately or otherwise.